In this video, I'm going to show you the different ways you can create a gradient from one color. And let's get started. I'm using gouache, which is a opaque watercolor, so it is receptive to water as a way to lighten it. The less water you use, the darker the color will be. The more water you use, the lighter the color will be. And I also show what it looks like when you add white to it, and white's another way to lighten the color. So of course, the less white you add to it, the darker it will be. So I'm going to show you what those look like. One will be a little more opaque and one will be a little more transparent, and then there's like some in between. Now I want to show you my favorite blue. Okay, so this is phthalo blue. I don't know if you can see that. That's maybe a little intense. It has quite a range, and this will also demonstrate gouache. So if you add water to it, it still stays opaque to a point. You know, it can get lighter the more water you add. I have this blue, and so far I haven't used any white. I'm just using water. And the more water I add, the lighter the color. So I started out with darker paint here, kind of on the edges of this, what looks like a mermaid's tail. And then as I added water, I could get it lighter over here. So that creates like some depth. So you don't have to use a lot of paint. I think I squirted out like a pea size of paint. And so far, you know, I haven't used it all up. I'm gonna use some more. So I'm gonna show you what it's like without adding white paint and just using the blue by itself. Because obviously I can get a lot of color out of it, and then I can also lighten it without using white paint. And you know, kind of do the same effect here where the edges are darker, edges of the tail are darker, and then as I go out it gets lighter. So that creates some attention on the tail, kind of naturally frames it. This is all one paint, and I haven't added any white. The lightness here comes purely from water. So you can see like the darkness varies as you add water, right? And the opacity decreases the more water you add. So this is like almost like acrylic, but much smoother, much lighter in terms of texture, you know? So then I want to show you this color mixed with white and see the difference. Because one way you can lighten gouache is you can lighten it with water, like I showed here. You can also lighten it with white. So let me grab some white. So I went way light here because I didn't have a whole lot of blue. But you can see it's got more of an opacity. So it's like similar, but it's more pastel-like. It's more like, I don't know, it's not really a periwinkle, but it's akin to that. It's still got some green in it. Not as purple as a periwinkle's like purple. Anyway, you could adjust, you know, like maybe you want somewhere in between. You go like that. I want to show you white as well and the impact white could have. So my brush I just used the same brush, and so it already had some blue in it, so this is almost like a really pale blue. But this has like a more opaque quality, whereas this has a transparent quality. I mean, this is actual paint, so of course it is opaque in nature. And opaque just means not transparent. You can't see through it. So, and transparent means not just overly sharing your feelings. Transparent means, you know, it means you can't see through. It means you can see through it. And the great thing about white gouache is that even when you add water, it stays opaque at first, just like the blue did. Now, of course, I was all about mixing the colors before, so let me like kind of mix them and show you. You know, maybe just a tiny bit of white. I'm gonna save this for later. You know, some people might want like a very prescriptive formula for this, like 2 parts blue, 1 part white. You know, that's about what I did here. So like, you know, it's more like this, but you know, it's opaque. I personally love white, and I think it's because I used it so much with acrylic that to increase or change hues, but I am loving that water does that with gouache. I do love that. So, but there's also like an ocean-like quality to how the water, you know, this piece or this square rectangle here, it's like darker on the side and then lighter on the side. Like that's a nice effect for like water or anything that you want to do shading. It can be a little challenging to be intentional about that, but like wherever you have more thinness, you know, by adding water. So yeah, this is probably like, ooh, sorry. This one is like 2 parts white to 1 part blue, and this is 2 parts blue to 1 part white. So let me like fix that. Okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah. And like, you know, as you paint, I'm very spontaneous when I paint. I don't want to just be like limited to like matching colors. Something you can do is experiment. The great thing about gouache being opaque is if you make a mistake, you can paint over it. Acrylic and gouache are very forgiving that way, where you can layer. I believe oil is too. It just takes longer to dry so that you can. It's harder to move quickly to layer. You know, if you really want to make a science of it, I let myself like be spontaneous and discover what happens on the paper or the canvas without regret. So like, you know, I don't have all my colors pre-mixed because they dry quickly sometimes, and I don't know, I just kind of like let things unfold on the paper. Sorry, this is kind of out of order. Of course, you can add more white and get it super light, like 3 parts white to 1 part blue. You know, that's probably, this actually might be like more like, yeah, this is like 3 parts white to 1 part blue. I think that's the best way to measure it. I'm not gonna get into like tablespoons or teaspoons, or I have no idea if artists really measure that way, but anyway, so this like, you know, you could achieve a nice gradient in a sky, you could achieve a nice gradient in the ocean, and even in the eyeball, like a blue eye, you could have a variety of blue in it, or if you're doing like a gradient background. And then you could get your lightest color, you can mix water with it, and then that's really interesting. You know, like it stays milky and opaque for a while, but you keep adding water to it and thinning it out. You'll see some of the paper come through. Just kind of move through the page till basically you're like rinsing off the paint and just incorporating more and more water. And then you can do like a wash, you know, like you have a super light background and you're relying more on the paper. So I think that's fun, you know. This isn't the best brush for a wash. You know, this is a much better brush for a wash. This flat one. You can cover more area quickly. So there's lots of ways, you know, you could make this one more watercolory. You can play with it. I recommend playing in life and experimenting, and particularly with art, because it's fun. It's more fun if you allow yourself to play and not have to be so tied to like a rule, or, you know, it's important to discover, and that's part of the fun of doing art. I think some people limit themselves and don't try new things because they don't know how to do it perfectly, and I think the way you learn is experimentation, and that's the adventure of it. You know, that's what makes it fun. So try it. I hope you enjoyed that video. That's just a really basic how-to guide and shows you the range of colors you can get from one tube of paint. So I hope you enjoyed that. Have a wonderful time painting, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.